Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CineMasochism here on the Movie Crusaders channel. I am Brian Michaels, your host for this show as usual, and with me, as always, is Sean Wasserkrug. Sean, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good about one thing, but not the thing we're talking about right now, which is the CineMasochism film of the week. But the thing I'm feeling good about we'll have released later on today, so I feel good about that.
Yeah. There's no mystery to it. This is the weekend of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the final, well, at least the final of this trilogy of Guardians of the Galaxy.
The final
Direct,
of this group.
yes, directed, of course, by James Gunn. So we decided for our show, in which we go back and look at mostly really awful films for your entertainment, we decided to go back and look at 2000's The Specials. This is a movie that was written by James Gunn. This is before Dawn of the Dead, before Scooby-Doo, even before any of that stuff. This is basically his first script that kind of got his career started. We'll get into that. But he also appears in this movie. His brother Sean Gunn is in this movie. So we thought, what better movie to kind of have on Guardians of the Galaxy 3 weekend than The Specials? May have been a very bad choice.
Yeah, I mean it's very Guardians-esque, and even the Suicide Squad, because I mean it's a superhero team of misfits.
It definitely wants to have that same tone to it. Yes.
Yeah. And this is obviously, I feel like this is like and in a way it is, and in a way it isn't. It's much like when you're like an inventor and you're trying to strive towards this one thing, but you got to make a few tweaks. You got to, like, here's version 1, here's version 2. Version 2 blew up. Version 3 knocked out the entire block of electricity. But version 984 is perfection. And so this feels like one of the versions that James Gunn was trying to do, and then he found it with Guardians, and then even later with Suicide Squad. So yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I think there's an old quote, I want to say it's like Thomas Edison or something like that. Somebody asked him about, like, all the failures leading up to when he finally invented the light bulb. And he said, I don't consider them failures. I found 99 ways not to make a light bulb, which led me to the one, kind of thing.
Exactly. This is definitely not the way to make
that's totally paraphrasing. I know I messed up that quote. I'm just the concept of it. It's kind of the same thing where we don't.
I wasn't going to knock you on it.
I know, but somebody out there will be like, that's not what he said. But James Gunn clearly had a kind of style, a tone he's looking for. And he eventually perfected that in several movies, but this was not the one. The Specials was released barely on September 22nd of the year 2000. That's 23 years ago. It opened in 2 theaters. So it premiered at number 70 that week on the box office charts, making a total at the end of its run, which was like 2 weeks, of $13,276 against a budget of $1 million approximately.
Is that our smallest one to date?
I think our smallest one that's been released theatrically. I think we had a couple that didn't even go theaters.
Okay.
Or there's ones there was no information on, like Hell Comes to Frogtown, things like that.
Yeah, Hell Comes to Frogtown technically. Yeah, okay, yeah.
That might have been like a straight to VHS kind of thing back then. But apparently got a budget of $1 million. I'm sure it made some of that money back because this is essentially a video release that just got a brief release at some theaters. But even then, I don't think it's made much money because it's still never even been released on, digital. It's not available. I think there is a DVD out there, but it's hard to come by. We had to watch it online, but it is what it is. As far as reviews, generous. Letterboxd average score 2.8 stars out of 5. IMDb average score of 5.7 out of 10, and Rotten Tomatoes 47% of critics gave this a positive rating and 55% of audience. This is one of those, I have to think that it's more that people like a lot of the talent involved and things like that, and they go back and they kind of look at, kind of see where they were before they were stars, because we'll get into that. There's a whole big cast in this thing.
Yeah.
But because based on the merit of itself, just looked at it as a movie, like if you changed who was in this movie, but it made the exact same movie, the exact same quality of acting and story and everything, this is a 1-star movie at best.
It's really rough. Like I think I said it while watching the movie, is that, and which is sad that it was James Gunn that wrote the script, is that it felt like a kid, like a Make-A-Wish kid. His final wish was, I want to write a superhero movie and have it be made into a film. And so James Gunn was like, okay, cool, I'll take the script. Craig Mazin, the guy who did Last of Us this year and Chernobyl, he directed this, guys. They also did the scary movies. But it's
No,
like
he just did superhero movie. He directed.
This superhero movie, yeah.
He did this, and then beyond that, his only other directing is one episode of The Last of Us. That because he became more of a showrunner, producer kind of guy on TV. So,
but yeah, so it's like a Make-A-Wish kid wrote the script. He gave to James Gunn, and James was like, "Okay, well, this is his final wish. We're gonna make this in the movie. Let me call a bunch of friends, and we'll just shoot this in a weekend. And we're not gonna mess with the script at all because it's the kid's script. And here's the movie. It's very special. Hence the specials. That's literally what this movie feels like. And when I said that while watching it, Brian didn't disagree with that. He was like,
I didn't. It feels very accurate. Now the thing is, it's like not even a matter so much of I think James Gunn. I mean, okay, so here's what happened. James Gunn supposedly wrote this script. His brother Sean Gunn passed it on to Jamie Kennedy, who I'm not sure exactly how he knew him. Who then passed it on to his manager, which is how this movie got filmed and how I think James Gunn got a manager to start with. Because apparently at the time of this movie, Jamie Kennedy was your biggest star, I think, of this cast. He's coming off the Scream movies, right when he was doing like Malibu's Most Wanted and all those kind of things.
Yeah, because Rob Lowe wasn't.
He was kind of in that lull.
Yeah, he was.
Well,
he was
one of his many. He seems to have a roller coaster of a career.
But yeah, because he was in I wouldn't say he was in a downfall or anything, but the '90s was his thing. Like mid '90s was Rob Lowe, and
well, he was like '80s, and they went down. They came back around like the Wayne's World and Tommy Boy brought him back, and then back down. Like,
exactly. Yeah. And now he's back up again. So, but like this was one of the times where he was low tide, basically, kind of a thing. But yeah, so I guess technically Jamie Kennedy, and I would say if it was 2 years later, I would say Thomas Hayden Church. Mm-hmm. But right now, Thomas Hayden Church is not.
Yeah, he was still the guy from Wings and not Will and Grace. What was it? I forget the other one's called. But yeah, it's okay. So the plot of the movie is America's, I think they describe it as the 6th or 7th best superhero team. The Specials are a group of geeks and oddballs. We get to see one day in their lives as fan and new member Nightbird joins the group just in time for the group to get a new line of action figures. But the members' extreme personalities and personal issues threaten to rip the group apart. That's your plot, such as it were. Sean,
very loose. That's a loose way of describing it.
Well, that's because they're. I think I commend them for coming up with this much, because me and you were like sitting there going, "Is there even a plot to this movie?" Because yes, this new girl shows up, and yes, there's a line of action figures, but there's like little bits and pieces of them. There's no big story to this movie.
There's no overarching story. There's subplots, but even then they're just scenes. You know, it's just a bunch. It just felt like a bunch of scenes thrown together and was made into a movie. For a superhero movie, there's no villains. There's no really fighting at all. There's no action sequences, which is why
you didn't have the budget for that.
They didn't. But it was just one of those things where you could at least have them like punch and kick and shit. But they don't even do that. It's just more like almost like a nerd, like Comic-Con. It's just a bunch of people who claim they have powers, standing around in suits, bitching and talking for an hour and 20 some minutes, and then the movie ends. And it's not even good talking. The dialogue and the written dialogue is very blocky and wooden at best. Every actor, who are all capable, good actors, clearly aren't even putting their fucking effort into it either. Like I say, that's why it feels like they just got called and said, "Hey, you just want to come down and shoot this real quick?" Because they're like, "All right, fine, I'll do this in between TV show episodes, or I'll do this in between just days on set."
Which Jamie Kennedy and Judy Greer were apparently shooting this at the same time. They were both shooting Three Kings, so they were going back and forth on their off days.
Which I feel bad for Jamie Kennedy of all people, because of what he had to wear in this movie. Because that's not a quick. Unless you just made him go dunk himself in a pool of blue paint, that's not gonna that takes forever to put that shit on.
Yeah, but at least it's just the face and hands. But yeah, so this movie,
Jamie Kennedy, he probably did full body.
Yeah, so if they were shooting this at the same time as Three Kings was shooting, that means this thing shot at the latest early 1999, which does mean that it came out before it was being filmed before Mystery Men. Because that's when I look at this movie, the first thing I think of is this is like a smaller budget version of Mystery Men. The same kind of loser misfit superheroes. The difference being that these people actually have powers, and that other one was kind of like, most of them weren't really powers.
No, they were cosplaying as superheroes, like Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
Mystery Men is had to walk so Kick-Ass could run, basically. Even though I know Kick-Ass is a comic book, but you guys get what I mean.
Yeah.
And we even said it during the movie. It's like, this makes Kick-Ass look like Avengers Endgame.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, Mystery Men, like, we've talked about it. I enjoy Mystery Men. Brian's, you're about...
Fine.
You're fine, yeah. But oh my god, this movie makes Mystery Men look like a classic upon like Oscar-worthy performances compared to this.
It really does, and it's like the only reason I brought up the when they were filming is because you first look at it and go, oh, this is a Mystery Men knockoff, but this was being made before Mystery Men came out, so it's like, okay, so it's just a similar-ish idea. The original script apparently was a lot more of that, because if you've seen this movie is kind of a hodgepodge. Much of it is filmed like The Office, complete with like the sit-down interviews. And now, when did The Office start? That wasn't until after this, right?
Yeah, but maybe the British Office.
Yeah, the British Office. But it was
I'll look it up real quick.
Very much that same style, where they're sitting there doing interviews and stuff, intercut with like watching them do it. And apparently, the original script was completely like that.
The original Office was 2001.
Yeah, so this is before that. So, but apparently the original style was that it was them sitting down doing like the interviews and cut off with like kind of like they're filming a documentary.
If anything, it's using the Real World because that was around.
Yeah, and then
so,
and
they're doing like their testimonial stuff.
It was supposed to be like the camera following them around like documentary style, like The Office or Real World or something like that. But apparently, one of the reasons James Gunn really doesn't like the outcome of this movie is because they didn't go completely that style. Like parts of it are that style, then parts of it are filmed like a regular movie, and it's almost more like a sitcom at times. And so the balance of that doesn't work out at all. Now, I'm not saying James Gunn's original script was a masterpiece or anything. It's clearly the dialogue and stuff. There's a lot of jokes that just are not funny, things like that. So I'm not saying it was good, but I'm saying that it may have been better if it was at least more consistent.
Yeah, because like it got to the point where the testimonial, real world, office-y parts felt kind of forced in and not with the rest of the film, because you're just like, what? Who are they doing this for? Like, are they shooting something? You don't find out. Like, who's this for? Is it for this toy thing, which is like the big, I guess, plot point of this movie? Is that they're getting toys?
It seems the climax of this movie is the reveal of their new action, because I guess they feel like that legitimizes them. Like, we have our own action figures.
Yeah.
So they go to this ceremony, they're going to release these action figures, but they're the worst action figures ever made. The problem is they aren't even made the worst, like they're just bad action figures. Like we've seen a lot of really horrible action figures over the years, but this literally looks like some 10-year-old kid made them in his basement with clay or something. It's like they didn't even try to make it. It doesn't look like a toy company made bad figures. It looks like somebody homemade some figures, and it just looks stupid as hell.
Like I said, the budget was there for it, and it just makes you wonder, how. I mean, like I said, James Gunn and Craig Mazin had to call in a lot of favors to get these people in here. Because I mean, like I said, going through the cast, you got Rob Lowe, who I love, who is honestly not bad in this movie. He's probably the one.
He's playing the same role Rob Lowe always plays.
Exactly. Like Rob Lowe's just playing Rob Lowe, which is not bad. He's the one character. He seems to just be the only one actually doing what he knows works. Jamie Kennedy is basically like Eric Cartman in this. He's just gonna spout off obscenities and just be Jamie Kennedy basically with Unhinged. You got Judy Greer, who's basically just playing like goth girl through the whole film. You've got was it Jordan Ladd, who we know from Club Dread, whose dialogue is really bad in this movie, and she's wearing a horrendously awful wig.
Oh, that haircut, that wig, yeah.
Yeah, you got, is it Paget Brewster?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's painfully looks like she just does not want to fucking be there. Like, it feels like every line she's delivering is like in anguish, because she just so badly does not fucking want to be in this movie anymore. And then you've got the guy that, Sean Gunn also. We'll set aside Sean Gunn real quick. Thomas Hayden Church, I'm sorry, does anyone believe this guy's a good actor? Because I have never believed him as a good actor. He's just a guy with a monotone voice. He's not funny. He's just this like caveman looking motherfucker.
Well, that's just it. Is like, okay, so I knew him. I don't know if you ever watched the show. I knew him.
I know what Wings is, but no, I didn't.
But I'm saying he fit that, because you talked about the Cro-Magnon kind of thing. He fit that kind of dumb oaf kind of role very well. It's when in the years since then they've tried to make him like this leader kind of esteemed
Just
character.
because
It's
he
like
fucking
it
did
doesn't work.
Sideways doesn't make him a good actor, and Sideways is overrated as shit. Is it Sideways? It's Sideways, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, Sideways.
So
But
it's
yeah,
him.
every time he talks in this, I'm just like, oh my god, fucking finish! I don't want to listen to this guy talk anymore.
But so we have all these superheroes who have powers that we don't necessarily really understand because they never use them or show them until like the very last montage in which you see some like really bad homemade special effects to like show them using their powers. But yeah, you have the
Make
ones
no
you mentioned.
sense to the characters anyway.
Yeah, the remaining ones you had James Gunn, who is Minute Man, who everyone calls Minuteman.
Honestly, who I think probably had the best performance out of everyone in the movie. He seems the one person who's legitimately like Rob Lowe's an autopilot. James Gunn, I feel like, is the only one that's actually actively trying to act in this film.
Well, it's like he wrote the lines, so I guess he knew how to deliver them.
I guess,
Nobody else did,
I guess that's true. If you know the blueprint, you're gonna bill it better.
Yeah, you have Kelly Cofield, who I mostly know from In Living Color. She's done a couple other things, but that's the main thing I know her from. She plays kind of almost like a mom character to Sean Gunn, who appears as this alien who's basically just there to make faces and funny noises, which
And blah blah blah.
that's
And
Sean
then,
Gunn for you.
and then occasionally will speak normal, like when he ordered a Bloody Mary. And it's just, and he's like, and it's like you can tell that much like with Jamie Kennedy, they clearly put the paint budget on Jamie Kennedy because there's so many times in the movie where Sean Gunn's green paint is faded.
It looks like it's been like faded or worn off. Yeah.
Yeah, because like there's times where he's like looks real green, and then there are times where it's like, no, he's kind of looks like it's almost like when you have like the sour apple blow pop, and you're starting to get to the gum part, and you see like fades of green and then fades of like the pinkish for the gum. He looks like that through most of the fucking film, especially like around like the back of the head neck area. So it's like they never touch him up throughout this movie, and oh my god, like you watch Sean Gunn in this, and you're like, I'm so glad that you became a way better actor than this because this is like horrible. And then you got this guy that you were like, what the fuck's this guy's power? Mike Schwartz, who played
U.S. Bill.
U.S. Bill, who was clearly the special in the specials. Because my God, every line of dialogue, he's the equivalent of the I like turtles if he was an adult and a superhero.
Yeah, he was just there to be an idiot.
Strong.
Apparently, he has super strength, but again, this just never comes into play in the movie because it's just, which is why it just feels like now the whole thing of this movie is like these are not people who think they have powers or who pretend to be superheroes. These are people who supposedly are or do have powers and are superheroes. The seventh best team in the world, apparently. But the thing is, because you never see them use their powers, it just makes it feel even more just like people cosplaying, especially since their actual costumes are worse than most cosplay costumes you see at like a Comic-Con kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you even said Pageant Brewster looked like she was from Star Trek.
Hers looked like a homemade Star Trek uniform. And everyone else's just looked like a homemade uniform.
Well, I guess Thomas Hayden Church looked a little Star Trek-y as well.
The whole production design of it, like you go in their headquarters, is just like somebody's house with like a flag literally thumbtacked up to the wall.
Yep.
To have their little insignia behind them, and it's just like they clearly
Rob
had no
Lowe
budget.
like these antenna things to wear.
But it wasn't even antenna; it was like a little thing he wore like over his ears that had like up on the side.
It looked so bad.
Yeah, it was just dumb. There are a few other random talking about more friends joining up in the movie. Random cameos by Taryn Manning, Jenna Fisher, who I believe was James Gunn's wife at the time, or at least girlfriend, and then he married her. Melissa Joan Hart shows up in it. Michael Weatherly. So yeah, a lot of people in this movie, a lot of talent wasted for what is really just such a waste of a movie, top to bottom.
Most of the movie, Brian and I spent most of the time like this, and it was only an hour 20 minutes.
An hour 20 minutes. We did at least 5 time checks,
and it was just like we just spent so much time just like, do we have to keep watching? Can we just stop? And it's like, no, we got to finish this for the show. But there's so many times where I would catch Brian, and Brian's just like, you'd see like I can see the headache starting to build for Brian. Mine was already there, but it's just like there were so many times where you're just like,
you looked angry.
I was actively mad. I was actively mad watching this. Like I'm mad when we watch a shitty film. I was mad at this because we know what James Gunn is capable of. We also know what this cast is capable of. We have so many comedians in this group. Not a single funny line is delivered in this film. It's just mind-numbingly dull. And
I think I described it as, I mean, while I agree the Make-A-Wish script idea is spot on, it also felt to me like something like back in the 90s, early 2000s, something like if my friends decided to get together and make their own film on their home video camera.
Yeah.
This felt like that, not just because of the production value, but because of the quality of it.
This made Fantastic Four look competent.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
It does. It does. And
we're talking about that. We're talking about the Roger Corman.
Yeah, we're talking about the one that we talked about on the show.
Yeah.
And that one we know got fucked over. And they had even less probably than what these guys did. And this makes that movie look competent.
Yeah,
Like,
and not even just from a budget standpoint, but I mean this one, it felt like a sketch comedy, but like a 5-minute sketch dragged out into a 70-minute movie, and it didn't even have enough jokes for the 5 minutes.
It's like an improv group that doesn't know that they're not funny. Like someone throw out a line. What's your superpower? I am Nightbird. What's that mean?
I lay eggs.
It means I lay eggs. and then of course like Tommy Stringham like, well, they don't tell you that whatever's in the eggs is a different power. It's like, cool. Are you gonna show that? No, shut the fuck up. All right, let's move on. And it's like, oh man, it's so. And then like they kept, like I said, they just kept trying to add new subplots, which once again made it feel like an improv. Like you have this, and then like, you know what, I'm gonna do this now. And then like Rob Lowe, like characters like going off into another group, and it's like, okay, well, don't be a douchebag. I would never do that to you guys. And then he goes to be a douchebag, and it's like, you've given 3 minutes of screen time to this plot, and now it's overtaken the film to a point. And
well, such as it were, but it's like you can't really overtake a film that had no direction to start with.
Yeah, and then there's just
even in the end, it just ends like, okay, time's up.
There's no likable characters in this movie because you kept expecting like, oh, Rob Lowe is the one you like, but then like him and he does something douchey to Thomas Hayden Church with Patch and Brewster, and you're like, well, okay, but Thomas Hayden Church is a dick, and then it's like, but no, the movie doesn't want to make the movie actually almost like wants you to feel bad for him.
Yeah, he's supposed to be the good guy, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but then like he talks to his wife, and even then it sounds evil. Like I was like, who are we supposed to be rooting for in this movie? Because Nightbird isn't given enough screen time to care. And then
I feel like they want us to identify with Nightbird because she's like joining the group, so it's kind of like our introduction to the group. We're learning about them while she is, but then you don't even like her because she's just stupid too.
Well, she's just there. They don't give her context of anything, and then so I guess like you're rooting for Jamie Kennedy, I guess, because he's the one that he's like the if we're using Guardians, he's the Rocket of the group. He was considered a villain. But then he joined them to become a hero, but they're kind of breaking up.
Now he's the crude one, making all the bad jokes.
Exactly. And so he kind of feels like he's losing his family to a point. But once again, they don't delve into that enough to give him the character development.
That's why I feel like you said, I think this was James Gunn's like draft 1 of 50 until he got to like Guardians or the Suicide Squad.
Well, the problem is that he didn't create either one of those. He found a comic book that was like, oh, these are my people.
Yeah.
Let me write a script for this for MCU. And they're like, all right, fuck it, do it. Because even James Gunn said before, he's like, I had no intentions of making that film. I did not think MCU was gonna let me do that movie. And then here we are.
Yeah.
Kind of
but
thing.
It's like he had these ideas in his mind, and so he thought, oh well, this is a property. Yes, I can use my ideas in this property and it will work. Because and there are flashes of James Gunn in here. There's one scene in particular where this random musical dance sequence, which starts with Sean Gunn, and then Kelly Cofield jumps in, and along with some of the other people.
Everyone does.
Everyone that's in that scene.
It's the replacements in the jail cell scene for the replacements, which worked in that movie. It's annoying in this movie.
It's completely pointless and out of place, but I could totally. It felt like James Gunn, especially because I'm watching the scene going, it feels like the opening credits of Peacemaker, and I almost wanted to go back and see if like
It
some of the
did.
same moves are used in the
It did.
Peacemaker opening
You
credits.
wanted to, and I was like, it's not the same moves.
It's not the same
close.
moves, but it's definitely kind of the same idea to it. It's just people up there just doing a dumb dance, just dressed up as
Yeah, they're
superheroes.
all doing the same kind of hand motion
Yeah.
kind of thing, and they're all moving in unison.
Which how do they just happen to know this dance together? I don't know, but
How do most dance sequences happen in films?
well,
Like,
in musicals it makes sense because
no, I'm talking about like in high school movies in the
oh
90s.
yeah,
Like
oh that's always been a question. How they
or,
all just suddenly jump into the
like,
dance.
oh, like, okay, did the entire high school practice this dance number before prom? Shut the fuck. No, you didn't. Someone's got to be. That's the thing. Is like anytime they do that, I know we're going subpart. They should at least show like 5 people who are out of sync, who don't know the moves, just to prove that not everyone is a perfect fucking dance
Just
person.
have somebody be like, "How do you guys know this dance?"
Like, screw it, I'm walking off. And just to make it more real, they should have done that. But yeah, in this one, you got all these people like, did you guys practice this at home? Did you get, because you clearly aren't superheroes, because you aren't going out to save the day until the very fucking end of the movie. So is this what you guys do from hours 2 to 4? Are you guys practicing a dance number that you guys can do at a random bar when you need to feel good about themselves? Because that's what this feels like.
Like finally we have our chance to do our dance. Let's go.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
of course, just like most James Gunn, it's set to some like obscure, cheesy '70s song. You know,
yeah, I don't even remember what the song is now.
I don't either.
But yeah, it's not good. And like I said, the people who are giving this, I guess I would call it average ratings, because they're not praising the movie. But like when you read the scores, the Letterboxd and all that kind of stuff, it's like I feel like these people are doing like, well, they tried. And it's like, no, they didn't. They didn't try. They gave 10% up to this film. And I think most people are giving credit to this movie because I think they're seeing like, wow, so this is James Gunn's first attempt. And look at the cast and look at all those people. Like this shows promise. It didn't. Because I'm sorry, at the end of this movie, I wouldn't have given James Gunn the time of day. I wouldn't have. And if anything, I would have looked down at all these actors in future roles after this. Luckily, I'm not a studio executive. But this movie's rough. It does not deserve to be watched by anybody. I would like to have my 85 minutes back after watching this movie.
No, I'm gonna go ahead and lump this 30 minutes in too. So we'd like our 2 hours back.
Yes, we've put in our community service of shit film time for the week.
This is one of those movies that put the masochism in cinemasochism.
It did. Not that we were like screaming like this guy, but we were just drastically just like
bored and angry. And now here's the worst part. I'd seen this movie before. It had been a long time. I probably saw it back in the early 2000s, probably not right when it first came out, but at some point back then. And I knew it wasn't good, but I was like, you know what? It's James Gunn and stuff. It'll be fun to go back and look at, when it was the first basically movie script he ever wrote and got made. And, some early acting from him and Sean Gunn and some of these other people we know. And I watched it and I'm like, oh, this isn't even fun. It's
not
boring. So yeah, this is another one you guys can chalk up in the missed column. Do you have anything more you want to add about this movie? Or are we done?
No, there's nothing more I want to add to this movie. It doesn't deserve any more time than what we've given it. We've already given it a third of what the movie actually gave us. No, we don't. It doesn't deserve any more time.
Yeah, we've already given this one too much. So that is going to be it for this episode of CineMasochism. We haven't locked in our next movie yet, so I can't really tease that one for you yet. We do have lots of other stuff on the channel, though. Take it away, Sean.
Yeah, if you guys enjoyed this episode, feel free to give it a like, subscribe, comment. Let us know if you guys saw this movie. What did you think of it? Are you guys excited for Guardians 3, which is the whole reason why we watched this movie in the first place? Don't forget to follow us on all the social medias outlets you see below. Coming up next, we will have our non-spoiler and then spoiler discussion of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is the whole reason why we're here. We are going to cancel this week's episode of the Weekly Crusaders just because we shot a lot this week and we still have to shoot the Guardians and all that stuff. But most importantly, check out our summer movie preview that we kicked off with Guardians of the Galaxy this week, where Brian and I will be going over almost every single movie that comes out during the summer, as well as our box office top 10 predictions for the end of the summer. It's a fun video. I apologize for the internet connection on my end, and if it's happened during this, I can't tell until after I go to record it. Brian says I look good, so it's fine. But yeah, I know it's rough
Well,
on
your
some
internet
women.
collection look good. I can't say you look good, but that's all.
It's true. I shaved and it was a mistake. I need to grow my facial hair back. My boss told me I looked like a thumb. I was like, thanks, man. But also, this past week's episode of Weekly Crusaders, where we talked about Oscar and Loverboy is out. I would definitely check that out, especially for Oscar, because that was a fun conversation that we had.
Victory.
Yes, Brian's so happy about that.
Happy.
Next week, crap, what comes out next week? We literally just did a whole summer movie preview. Is there anything that comes out next week? Or is it another week for Guardians?
I believe it's a slow. There's something coming up, but it's slow. Next week is
Hypnotic?
Well, there's a lot of small stuff. Fool's Paradise, Hypnotic, Knights of the Zodiac, and then that Michael J. Fox documentary is.
That's right. Which are stuff that I do want to see, but the problem is I might get Hypnotic in my area. I won't get Fool's Paradise, which sucks because that's the one I really, really want to see. But I mean, we're for the most part going to be having more like a good chunk of films coming out between now and the end of August, especially to the end of July. So be on the lookout for all those videos. We will be here to talk about all of them, whether they are good or bad. And like Brian said, we'll be back next week for CineMasochism. I still don't know what we're going to be talking about. Brian, I think if you don't have anything planned, I think we're probably going to do what we were originally going to do for this week, because we're going to do the specials next week.
Possibly.
We're probably going to do that one.
We'll go look at the list and decide what we're doing.
If it ends up being that one, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be just as good as this.
Yeah,
or
you know, I might intentionally just look for one that I know will at least be fun to watch. Bad. We'll look at the list and figure it out.
Gotcha. Well, anyway, we are the Movie Crusaders. I'm Sean Wascrew. That is Brian Michaels. And until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.